Get out of here right now! People like you don't belong in this store! Lauren Mitchell's sharp voice cut through the polished silence of Lux Emporium, freezing customers mid-step. Gasps echoed across the floor as heads turned toward a black woman in faded jeans and scuffed sneakers, standing quietly near the display of $6,000 dresses. Before we get into this unbelievable story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. And don't forget to hit subscribe, give this video a like, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss stories like this. Now, let me take you inside the Lux Emporium on Ocean Drive, where one decision would change everything. It was 9 o'clock in the morning when Evelyn Harper stepped into her own flagship store, the very store she had founded with her bare hands. At 55 years old, she was worth $4.2 billion, the powerful owner of 1032 Lux Emporium locations nationwide. But today, no one knew who she was. Dressed in a plain cotton blouse, faded jeans, and old sneakers, she looked like just another Miami local passing through. Evelyn didn't choose the disguise to hide her wealth. She chose it to reveal the truth. Reports had reached her office about discriminatory practices at this particular store, and she came unannounced to see for herself. She wanted to witness, firsthand, how customers were treated when they didn't fit the image of wealth the store projected. To Lauren Mitchell, the 40-year-old store manager, appearances were everything. For 15 years, she had clawed her way up from a sales associate to managing this flagship location. But behind her polished exterior and sharp heels was a deep insecurity born from her working-class childhood in Hialeah. She hated reminders of her past and built her entire persona around exclusivity. In her eyes, Lux Emporium wasn't just a luxury store. It was a sanctuary for the elite, and anyone who didn't look like they belonged was a threat. From the moment Evelyn walked in, Lauren's judgment took hold. Her eyes swept over the woman's worn sneakers, the taped corner of her wallet peeking from her pocket, the simple gold chain around her neck. Another window shopper, she thought, already dismissing her without a second glance. Marcus Tate, the assistant manager, noticed too. At 38, Marcus was ambitious and ruthless, always eager to impress Lauren. He saw Evelyn not as a customer but as an opportunity. A chance to prove his loyalty by protecting the brand. He moved closer, scanning Evelyn with the same cold calculation. Meanwhile, behind the counter, Aisha Coleman watched silently. At 29, she was a single mother of a 6-year-old boy, working here to make ends meet. Unlike Lauren and Marcus, she didn't judge customers by appearances, but fear kept her quiet. She couldn't risk her job. Vivian Holt, a 60-year-old wealthy socialite and one of the store's most regular customers, hovered nearby with a glass of champagne in hand. Known for spending nearly $2,000 a month at Lux Emporium, she considered herself the gatekeeper of the store's elite status. Vivian's opinion of who belonged carried weight, and Lauren thrived under her approval. Evelyn wandered through the pristine aisles, pausing at a rack of pastel silk dresses. Her fingers brushed the fabric gently, memories flooding back. Her mother's humiliation decades ago when she was turned away from a store just like this one, told she couldn't afford to breathe the air inside. That day planted a promise in Evelyn's heart. No one would feel small in a place she built. But today, she was beginning to wonder if her vision had failed. Lauren approached, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. A thin smile stretched across her face. "Ma'am," she said softly, but her tone carried poison. "Are you lost? There's a thrift store on Collins Avenue. You might feel more comfortable there." The words sliced through the air, drawing the attention of nearby shoppers. Evelyn raised her head slowly, meeting Lauren's cold stare. Her voice was calm, steady. "I'm exactly where I need to be." Lauren blinked, caught off guard by the confidence in those words. She wasn't used to pushback. especially from someone she had already deemed unworthy. Marcus stepped forward, folding his arms. If you need directions, we can point you toward places more suited to your budget, he said, his voice deliberately loud enough for the growing crowd to hear. A chuckle rippled through the group of affluent customers nearby. Vivian smirked, swirling her champagne. Lauren, darling, be kind. Maybe she wandered in by mistake. These price tags aren't for everyone. You know. The statement landed like a spark on dry grass, igniting whispers across the store. Phones appeared in hands. A TikTok influencer in a $3,000 suit raised his camera subtly, sensing drama brewing. Aisha's stomach knotted as she scanned the faces around her. She wanted to step in, to tell Lauren to back down, but fear rooted her to the counter. Evelyn turned her attention to a jewelry display, admiring a $12,000 diamond necklace. Lauren's voice rose a little louder this time, ensuring everyone within earshot could hear her contempt. Those earrings you're holding? They're $12,000. I'm guessing that's a little out of reach. Vivian's laugh chimed in like glass breaking. Don't worry, dear, she added mockingly. There's a costume jewelry shop just down the street. The crowd chuckled again. Emboldened by Lauren's lead, Evelyn remained calm, her expression unreadable. But inside, she was cataloging every word, every smirk, every insult, without drawing attention. She activated the voice recorder on her phone. This wasn't about her feelings anymore. It was about evidence. She asked, politely, to try on the necklace. Lauren's eyes gleamed with condescension, her voice cutting like a blade. Attention! Everyone, she announced theatrically. This lady wants to try on a $7,500 necklace. Heads turned instantly. The store fell silent except for the soft hum of cameras recording. Marcus clapped slowly, his grin wide and cruel. Should we check her credit first? He said, earning more laughter. The humiliation was growing louder, feeding off the crowd's energy. A middle-aged man in a Rolex muttered, Maybe she's here for Marshall's clearance rack, another whispered to his friend. Try the flea market on Biscayne Boulevard. Lauren's power trip intensified as she basked in the mob's approval. This is Luxe Emporium, she declared proudly. Not a discount bin. Our real customers don't count pennies. The words carried through the store like a verdict. Evelyn's gaze swept across the crowd, catching sight of Aisha's downcast face, the influencer's flashing camera, Vivian's smug smirk. Slowly, she placed the necklace back on the velvet stand. Her calmness unsettled Lauren, who expected anger or shame, not silence. Ma'am, Lauren said sharply, if you're not purchasing anything, I'll have to ask you to leave. Evelyn's lips curved slightly, almost imperceptibly. I understand, she said softly, without another word. She turned and walked toward the exit, her phone still recording, to the crowd. It looked like defeat, but Evelyn knew better. Outside, the Miami heat wrapped around her as she stepped into the sunlight. Pulling out her phone, her fingers moved quickly across the screen, sending one short, deliberate message to her assistant. Code red, bring the board, bring legal, bring security, inside. Lauren smiled smugly, believing she had protected the sanctity of Luxe Emporium. What she didn't know was that the next few hours would destroy everything she thought she knew about power, status, and respect. Because the woman she had just humiliated wasn't just another shopper. She owned the store, and by the end of the day, everyone inside would find out exactly who Evelyn Harper really was. Lauren Mitchell stood behind the counter, her manicured nails tapping impatiently against the glass as she watched Evelyn Harper walk deeper into the Luxe Emporium showroom. In her mind, the woman had no business being here, and she was determined to make that clear. The morning sun spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows, glinting off $12,000 diamond necklaces and $5,000 handbags. But the atmosphere in the store was already thick with tension. Lauren's voice cut sharply through the soft classical music playing overhead. "Excuse me, ma'am," she said loudly, ensuring the entire boutique could hear her. "This isn't a browsing gallery. Our clients come here to purchase, not to sightsee." A few customers nearby glanced up, whispers starting to circulate. Vivian Holt, draped in pearls and holding a glass of champagne, strolled over, her lips curling into a smirk. "Lauren, dear," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "Let's be honest with her. Places like this aren't designed for everyone." She turned deliberately, addressing Evelyn as though she were invisible. "There's a thrift shop on Collins Avenue. Darling, you'll be more comfortable there." A quiet ripple of laughter passed through the small group of affluent shoppers gathered near the counter. Evelyn stood motionless, her hand resting lightly on a display of pastel silk dresses, her expression calm and unreadable. But Lauren mistook her composure for weakness, and it only emboldened her further. Marcus Tate, the 38-year-old assistant manager hungry for approval, stepped closer, his tone mocking. "That dress you're holding," he said, his voice pitched just loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, "costs more than some people's rent for an entire year. You might want to try the outlet mall in Sawgrass instead. They've got great sales." His smirk widened when a few customers chuckled at the remark. A young TikTok influencer in a $3,000 suit pulled out his phone, subtly angling it to record the interaction. He smelled viral content, and he wasn't wrong. Meanwhile, Aisha Coleman, standing at the register with trembling hands, forced herself to keep scanning barcodes and bagging purchases. She hated what was happening, but with a 6-year-old son at home and rent due in 2 weeks, she couldn't afford to speak up. She silently prayed for the scene to end, but deep down, she knew it was just beginning. Evelyn, still calm, shifted her attention to the jewelry counter. Her fingertips grazed the edge of a velvet display tray holding an elegant diamond necklace. "I'd like to see this one, please," she said softly, her tone polite and steady. Lauren seized the opportunity to make a spectacle out of her request. She straightened her back, plastered on a wide, mocking smile, and raised her voice to the entire store. "Attention, everyone! This lady wants to try on a $7,500 necklace." The boutique fell silent for a moment, then erupted into muffled laughter and low murmurs. Phones were lifted higher now, recording every second. Marcus crossed his arms, his grin turning sharp. "Should we check her credit first? Lauren, make sure she's qualified?" A few people snickered, and Vivian clutched her pearls theatrically. "Oh, bless her heart," she said loudly enough for Evelyn to hear. "She probably thinks it's cubic zirconia." A man in a 3,000 Gucci blazer chimed in. "Maybe she's shopping for prom." "There's a Ross dress for less across town," another customer murmured. "Try the flea market. They've got jewelry more in your range." The laughter grew louder, bolder, feeding off one another's cruelty. It became clear this was no longer about one manager's prejudice. It was becoming a performance, a spectacle, where the store's wealthiest clients had turned Evelyn into the day's entertainment. Aisha's chest tightened as she glanced between Evelyn and the growing crowd. She whispered to the coworker beside her, "This isn't right." But her voice was swallowed by the buzz of mockery around them. Evelyn remained poised, though her grip on her phone tightened subtly at her side, without drawing attention. She slid her thumb across the screen, activating her phone's recorder. Every word, every insult, every face, she captured it all in high definition. She wasn't reacting out of anger, she was collecting proof. "Here," Lauren said theatrically, plucking the necklace from the display and holding it high between 2 fingers as if it might be contaminated. "But just so you know, we don't let customers handle pieces like this unless they're pre-approved." House rules. She leaned in slightly, her voice dropping to a sharp whisper. And judging by that taped-up wallet of yours, I'm guessing you're not. The insult was designed to humiliate. And it worked. Gasps rippled through the crowd. And someone whispered, "Did you see her shoes?" No wonder. Marcus added fuel to the fire, saying loudly, "I mean, come on, look at the sneakers." He gestured toward Evelyn's scuffed shoes with exaggerated disgust. "Lux Emporium clients drive Bentleys and Teslas. They don't come in here looking like that." Vivian giggled into her champagne flute, raising her phone to snap a photo. "This will be great for the group chat," she whispered to another customer, her voice dripping with disdain. By now, more than a dozen phones were pointed directly at Evelyn, their little red recording lights blinking. The crowd grew louder, emboldened by each cutting remark, their laughter bouncing off the marble walls. To them, Evelyn was just another outsider, someone who didn't belong in their curated world of wealth and privilege. Lauren basked in the attention, mistaking the crowd's cruel amusement for admiration. "Sweetie," she said in a tone so saccharine it was almost venomous. "This is Lux Emporium, not a discount bin. Our clientele doesn't compare price tags. They don't need to." She gestured broadly to the designer-clad customers surrounding them. "This," she announced, "is a store for people who buy $7,500 necklaces on a whim, not on layaway." A few customers clapped mockingly. Someone shouted, "Well said," another added. "She's brave, though I'll give her that." Evelyn placed the necklace gently back onto the velvet display. Her calmness unnerved Lauren, who expected either anger or embarrassment, not silence. The tension shifted. The cruelty had reached its peak, and now the entire store waited to see how Evelyn would respond. But she didn't give them the reaction they wanted. Instead, she turned slightly, her gaze sweeping slowly over the crowd, locking eyes with one person after another. There was no shame in her expression, only quiet power. Aisha felt her throat tighten as Evelyn's eyes met hers. There was something in that look, something steady and unbroken, that made Aisha want to cry. Lauren, however, mistook Evelyn's silence for surrender. "If you're not buying anything," she said, her tone clipped and cold, "I'll have to ask you to leave before security escorts you out." Marcus puffed his chest. "Ready to enforce the order," the customers murmured approvingly, clearly expecting Evelyn to retreat in humiliation. But Evelyn simply nodded once, her face unreadable, and said softly, "I understand," without another word. She turned away from the jewelry counter, slipping her phone into her pocket as she walked calmly toward the exit. Phones followed her movement, recording what many assumed was the quiet retreat of someone defeated, but outside the glass doors, beneath the blazing Miami sun, Evelyn Harper's calm cracked just enough to reveal the steel beneath. She pulled her phone back out, scrolling quickly to Nathan Brooks, her trusted assistant. Her voice was low, measured, deliberate. "Nathan," she said, "it's worse than we thought. Bring legal, bring security, and bring the board, code red." And with that, she ended the call, sliding her phone back into her pocket. Inside, however, Lauren leaned against the counter, sipping champagne as Vivian refilled her glass. "Some people just don't understand boundaries," Lauren said smugly, clinking her glass with Marcus's. "This is why we protect the brand." The gathered crowd laughed softly, assuming the matter was over. But what none of them realized, not Lauren, not Marcus, not Vivian, not even the mocking customers recording on their phones, was that the story had only just begun, because the woman they had spent the last 30 minutes humiliating wasn't some stranger off the street. She was the billionaire owner of Lux Emporium, and before the day ended, every single person inside that store would wish they had treated Evelyn Harper with the dignity she deserved. The energy inside Lux Emporium shifted sharply, turning from quiet amusement into something darker, more vicious. It started with Marcus Tate, always eager to prove his loyalty to Lauren, stepping forward and raising his voice just enough for the entire boutique to hear. "Before we let her handle anything else," he said, his tone sharp and mocking, "I think we should check her purse. You know, for security purposes. Can't be too careful these days." Gasps rippled through the group of shoppers as they turned their phones toward Evelyn Harper, their cameras ready to catch every second of her humiliation. Lauren Mitchell didn't stop him. Instead, she crossed her arms and smirked, feeding off the growing tension. "That's a good point." "Marcus," she said loudly, her voice cutting through the air. "Ma'am, would you mind showing us what's inside your bag? Just a precaution. Our store has standards to uphold." Every word dripped with venom disguised as professionalism. Evelyn stood still, her calm demeanor unbroken. But inside, she felt a familiar ache, not from embarrassment, but from recognition. She had seen this before, power wielded to humiliate, wealth used to exclude, cruelty disguised as class, without saying a word. She opened her small, faded purse, revealing her neatly folded receipts, a pair of reading glasses, and the old taped wallet she carried like a badge of honor. Lauren seized it immediately, holding it up for the crowd to see as though it were evidence of guilt. "Look at this," she announced theatrically, "held together with tape. This is what shopping above your station looks like." Laughter erupted around her, loud and merciless, bouncing off the marble walls of the boutique. A man in a tailored Armani suit whispered just loud enough to be heard. She probably spent her last $50 just to step inside this store. Vivian Holt, swirling her champagne with casual disdain, chimed in with a smirk. "Oh, please, darling." She came here for the free air conditioning. Phones were lifted higher now, recording every angle, every cruel remark, every degrading glance. The TikTok influencer in the corner grinned behind his camera, whispering, "This is going viral." Evelyn stayed quiet, her eyes steady, her breathing even. She was already thinking 3 steps ahead, letting the humiliation build and capture itself on every device in the room. Marcus wasn't finished. "Do you know what's funny?" he said, his grin sharp and mocking. "People come in here thinking they can play dress up. But Lux Emporium isn't a fantasy camp." He turned toward the crowd, gesturing like a performer on stage. "Look around you. Bentleys and Teslas in the parking lot, Rolexes, Hermes, Gucci, Cartier, real customers, real money." The crowd laughed, emboldened by his words, their cruelty growing with every passing second. A woman in designer heels whispered loudly, "Maybe someone should direct her to Walmart before she embarrasses herself further," another added. "The Salvation Army's having a sale. She might actually afford that." Lauren basked in the chaos, mistaking the crowd's laughter for approval. "This is Lux Emporium," she declared grandly, raising her champagne flute like a toast. "We curate an experience for the elite. We don't just sell products, we sell identity and honey." She turned back to Evelyn, her smile razor-sharp. "You don't fit the part." That line drew cheers from a few in the crowd, the sound ringing louder than ever. Phones zoomed closer, recording Evelyn's face, searching for signs of defeat, of shame, of retreat. But they found none. She stood motionless, composed, and oddly serene, as though she knew something they didn't. Aisha Coleman, standing behind the register, clenched her fists beneath the counter, her heart pounding. She wanted to scream, to tell them all to stop, but fear locked her throat. She thought about her 6-year-old son, Jamal, and the rent due next week. She couldn't lose this job. So, like everyone else, she stood silent, trapped between morality and survival. Vivian, enjoying the spectacle, stepped closer, her voice pitched high enough to carry, "Sweetheart, if you really want to feel glamorous. There's a lovely costume jewelry shop down the street. They've got things that sparkle too. Perfect for your budget. Another round of laughter exploded, louder than before, feeding the mob mentality that had taken over the store. Even some customers who initially hesitated to participate now found themselves swept up in the performance, tossing in their own jabs to feel included. A tall man in a crisp linen suit called out, "The flea market on Biscayne has some cute knockoffs. You'll blend right in." A younger woman filming on Instagram Live smirked. "Wait until TikTok sees this. Hashtag fake rich." The cruelty spiraled, each insult sharper than the last, bouncing from one person to another until it became collective entertainment. Phones clicked, videos streamed, faces blurred into a sea of smug smiles and pointed fingers, and through it all, Evelyn Harper remained unshaken. She turned her head slightly, scanning the faces in the crowd, committing them to memory, one by one. She met their gazes, her silence louder than any words she could have spoken. Marcus, emboldened by her calm, stepped in closer, lowering his voice just enough for her to hear, though he made sure everyone around could still catch the sting. "Here's a reality check," he said, his breath tinged with arrogance. "This store is for people who can afford to buy without thinking twice. It's for private jet owners, people who get invited to the charity galas, the yacht parties, the circles that matter." He leaned back and smiled cruelly. "You don't belong in this world. Never will." A sharp, collective gasp rippled through the room, followed by a few nervous chuckles. Even some of the customers paused, sensing Marcus had gone too far. But Lauren didn't stop him. She nodded approvingly, folding her arms like a queen surveying her court. "He's right," she said simply. "Know your place." The silence that followed was suffocating. Aisha's hand froze mid-swipe over the register, her chest tight with guilt. She wanted to scream that Evelyn had every right to be here, that anyone did. But she bit her lip so hard she tasted blood. Evelyn finally spoke, her voice soft but steady, slicing through the noise like glass shattering. "Are you finished?" The quiet command in her tone caught everyone off guard, silencing even the laughter. Lauren blinked, her smirk faltering for the first time all morning. Marcus hesitated, glancing at the crowd, uncertain now of the ground beneath him, but Evelyn didn't wait for their response. She placed the necklace she'd been holding back onto the velvet display, smoothing the fabric gently with her fingertips. Then she reached for her phone, tapping the screen once to stop the recording. "Thank you," she said calmly, her voice carrying farther than anyone expected. "You've given me everything I needed." Her words, cryptic and deliberate, unsettled Lauren, but before she could respond, Evelyn turned and walked toward the glass doors, her head held high. Phones followed her again, capturing what they assumed was defeat. But this wasn't defeat. Outside, in the humid Miami heat, Evelyn dialed a number she knew by heart. "Nathan," she said quietly when her assistant picked up. "We're moving to phase 2. Bring Cassandra. Bring legal. Bring security. Full board response. I want ownership documents, employee files, and security footage pulled immediately." Her voice was low, steady, and absolute. Nathan hesitated only a moment before replying. "Understood." Back inside, Lauren raised her glass in mock celebration. "To exclusivity," she said smugly, clinking her champagne with Vivian's. Marcus laughed, thinking he'd secured his place at Lauren's side, while the crowd resumed browsing, gossiping about the scene they had just witnessed. But what none of them realized, not Lauren, not Marcus, not Vivian, not even the customers still laughing into their phones, was that the storm had already been set in motion. The woman they had just humiliated wasn't a random shopper. She was the billionaire founder and CEO of Lux Emporium, and in less than 3 hours, the entire store would learn the cost of their arrogance, their cruelty, and their prejudice. Lauren Mitchell stood behind the jewelry counter, her arms crossed tightly, basking in the admiration she thought she had earned from the crowd. Her champagne glass sat half full beside her, the bubbles catching the light as the hum of whispers filled Lux Emporium. Marcus Tate stood close at her side, his smug grin wider than ever, feeding off the validation around him. Vivian Holt adjusted the diamond clasp on her $3,000 necklace. Her lips curved into a knowing smile as she surveyed the chaos she and Lauren had orchestrated. Across the room, Evelyn Harper stood silently near the exit, her hand still resting on the glass door as though she were ready to leave. But she wasn't leaving. Not yet. Her phone, still recording, had already captured every insult, every taunt, and every mocking laugh. And yet, to Lauren, that silence was unbearable. "You're still here?" Lauren snapped, her voice slicing through the tense air. "I thought I told you to leave. Or do I need security to throw you out?" The words landed like a challenge, and the crowd stirred, eager to see what Evelyn would do next. Marcus puffed out his chest, stepping forward, his hand brushing the radio clipped to his belt. "I can call David from security right now," he said, his tone laced with authority he didn't truly have. "We can escort her out in less than a minute." Several customers murmured in agreement, some whispering about how embarrassing it was for Evelyn to keep standing there. Phones came back up, the little red dots of recording lights blinking like stars in the bright boutique. Aisha Coleman, still behind the register, clenched the edge of the counter until her knuckles turned white. Her heart pounded painfully as she whispered to herself, "Please, just let her walk out. Just stop this." But Lauren was far from done. She took a deliberate step forward, her heels clicking against the polished marble floor, the sound echoing like warning shots. "This," Lauren declared loudly, gesturing toward Evelyn with a perfectly manicured hand, "is Lux Emporium, the flagship location of Miami's Ocean Drive. This is where real customers come to shop, people who can afford to breathe this air. And then we have you." She let the words hang for a moment, the venom in her tone making them heavier than glass. "Walking around here with your thrift store sneakers and your taped-up wallet, pretending like you belong." Vivian chuckled softly, her champagne glass tilted in approval. "Oh, Lauren, you're being too kind," she said, shaking her head with exaggerated sympathy. "She's probably here to take photos for Instagram so her friends think she's rich." A ripple of laughter spread across the boutique, but Evelyn remained composed, her hands folded neatly in front of her. Her silence, steady and deliberate, only enraged Lauren further. "Look at you," Lauren said sharply, her voice rising, every syllable ringing through the store. "People like you come in here thinking you can play dress-up, but you don't understand the first thing about this world. We don't have layaway plans. We don't haggle over price tags. We don't deal with people like you." Gasps escaped from several customers, and even Marcus hesitated for the first time, glancing uncertainly at his manager. But Lauren, blinded by her need to assert control, pressed forward. She leaned in closer, lowering her voice so only Evelyn could hear her next words, though the crowd, leaning in, caught every syllable. "You don't belong here," Lauren whispered coldly. "You never will." It was the breaking point. Evelyn slowly lifted her gaze, meeting Lauren's eyes with a calmness so unwavering it was almost unsettling. She didn't flinch, didn't react, didn't defend herself. That lack of response, that quiet strength, infuriated Lauren in a way words couldn't explain. And then it happened. In one swift motion, Lauren raised her hand and slapped Evelyn across the face. The sound cracked through the boutique like thunder. A collective gasp erupted from the crowd, the laughter dying instantly, replaced by stunned silence. Someone dropped their champagne glass. the sharp shatter cutting through the heavy stillness. Aisha covered her mouth, tears instantly springing to her eyes. Even Marcus froze, his breath catching as he stared at Lauren in disbelief. Evelyn didn't stumble. She didn't cry out. She simply stood there, one hand slowly reaching up to touch the reddening mark on her cheek. Then, to the crowd's shock, she smiled. It wasn't a smile of forgiveness, nor one of surrender. It was calm, controlled, and chillingly certain, the kind of smile that promised consequences. Security. Lauren barked suddenly, breaking the silence. "Get her out of my store." Her voice cracked slightly, betraying the faintest edge of panic beneath the bravado. Marcus moved instinctively, but stopped halfway, something in Evelyn's steady gaze rooting him to the floor. From the crowd, Vivian's voice broke the tension briefly. "Finally," she said with a small laugh, though her tone now sounded uneasy, unsure of what exactly she'd just aligned herself with. Phones were raised higher now, recording from every angle. Some customers were whispering frantically, others muttering that Lauren had gone too far. A few, sensing something monumental unfolding, began live streaming to thousands watching online. Evelyn slowly lowered her hand, her voice soft yet powerful as it cut through the murmurs. "You've made a grave mistake," she said, each word measured like a deliberate strike. Lauren scoffed, forcing a laugh she didn't feel. "Grave mistake?" she repeated mockingly. "The only mistake here is you thinking you belong in this store. Now get out." Evelyn didn't move. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, her expression calm, almost pitying. "No," she said quietly, but firmly. "I'm exactly where I need to be." The words landed heavy, though their meaning remained hidden to everyone but her. Then, without another glance at Lauren or Marcus, she turned and walked calmly out of the glass doors, her phone still recording as the crowd parted to make way. Outside, Evelyn stepped into the blinding Miami sun and immediately pulled out her phone, dialing a number she knew by heart. "Nathan," she said when her assistant picked up, her voice even but edged with steel. "Activate code red. I want legal. HR and security here within the hour. Bring the ownership documents and full authority from the board. No delays." Nathan's reply was immediate. "Understood. We'll be there." Evelyn ended the call and slipped the phone back into her pocket, taking a deep breath as the weight of the humid air settled around her. Back inside Lux Emporium, the atmosphere had shifted dramatically. The champagne-fueled laughter had vanished, replaced by hushed whispers and nervous glances. Marcus leaned close to Lauren, his voice low and uncertain. "Lauren, maybe that was too much." He murmured, "You just slapped a customer. People recorded it." Lauren waved him off, though her hand trembled slightly. "Please," she scoffed, forcing confidence she didn't feel. "She's nobody. Those videos will be forgotten in an hour." But Vivian wasn't so sure. Her gaze lingered on the glass doors, where Evelyn had disappeared moments earlier, for the first time. A flicker of doubt crossed her face. "I don't know. Lauren," she said softly, swirling the champagne in her glass. Something about her didn't seem ordinary. Aisha finally spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper but firm enough to be heard. "You didn't have to hit her," she said, her hands shaking. "That was wrong." Lauren turned on her sharply. "Watch your tone." "Aisha," she snapped, "if you want to keep your job, you'll stay out of this." Aisha swallowed her protest, biting her lip to stop the tears threatening to fall. Phones continued recording quietly in the background, customers exchanging uneasy looks. They didn't know who Evelyn was, but they sensed instinctively that what had just happened would not end here. And they were right, because at that very moment, 4 black SUVs were already slicing through Miami traffic, carrying Lux Emporium's corporate leadership, the same people Lauren thought she served, but whose patience was about to shatter in less than 2 hours. The store she ruled like her personal kingdom would become the stage for her reckoning. And when Evelyn Harper returned, she wouldn't be asking questions. She would be giving orders. Inside Lux Emporium, the mood had shifted from arrogance to unease. But Lauren Mitchell was still clinging to her false sense of power. She stood proudly behind the counter, sipping from a fresh glass of Dom Perignon, while Vivian Holt perched nearby, legs crossed, twirling her diamond bracelet with idle superiority. Marcus Tate had joined them, opening another chilled bottle as if the boutique had just defended its sacred status against an unworthy intruder. To exclusivity, Lauren declared smugly, raising her glass, to keeping Lux Emporium for the people who actually belong here. The small circle of wealthy shoppers gathered around her laughed softly, nodding in agreement. A few even raised their own champagne flutes, believing they had just witnessed another outsider put in her place. Across the room, however, Aisha Coleman was silent, her hands trembling as she folded receipts behind the counter. She couldn't shake Evelyn Harper's face from her mind. That calm, steady expression after Lauren slapped her in front of everyone. Guilt gnawed at her chest like a weight she couldn't set down. She whispered under her breath, "This isn't right." But her voice was drowned out by the hum of shallow laughter around her. At 3:47 p.m., the air outside Lux Emporium shifted. 4 black SUVs glided into the parking lot, sleek and deliberate, catching the afternoon sun as they pulled up directly in front of the glass doors. Heads turned inside as the vehicles came to a silent stop, their tinted windows reflecting the bright Miami sky. Lauren noticed but didn't falter, assuming they were VIP clients arriving for private shopping. "Perfect timing," she said with a smirk, dabbing at her lipstick before signaling Marcus to prepare champagne for their exclusive guests. The boutique's automatic doors slid open, and the sound of clicking heels echoed against the polished marble. Cassandra Lee, head of HR, led the group, her tailored navy suit as sharp as her expression. Behind her came Priya Sharma, the poised and calculating chief operating officer, Daniel Ortiz, the company's chief legal officer, and David Kim, director of security, his imposing presence cutting a silent path through the stunned shoppers. And then Evelyn Harper stepped in. Gone was the quiet, unassuming woman in faded jeans and scuffed sneakers. Evelyn now wore a sleek ivory pantsuit, her natural curls neatly pinned back, a soft gold chain resting at her collarbone. The shift in her presence was palpable. Calm, yet commanding. Elegant, yet unyielding. Conversations died mid-sentence. Laughter choked in throats. Phones, still raised by some customers, began streaming live without a word spoken. Lauren's practiced smile faltered, confusion flickering across her face. "Oh, welcome," she said, straightening nervously and stepping forward as if greeting dignitaries. "You must be here for a private showing. I just handled a situation with an inappropriate customer. Everything's under control." Cassandra's gaze snapped to Lauren, her tone cold and clipped. "Is it? Because from what I've seen, everything is far from under control." Lauren blinked, glancing between Cassandra and Evelyn, still oblivious to who stood in front of her. "I assure you," she began, forcing a laugh, "this store is running perfectly." "I protected the brand," Vivian chimed in confidently, placing a hand on Lauren's arm. "Exactly. That woman earlier? Completely out of place. Lauren did what she had to do." Cassandra's lips tightened, but before she could respond, Evelyn stepped forward. Her heels clicked softly against the marble, her expression serene but unyielding. When she spoke, her voice carried effortlessly, every syllable precise, steady, and deliberate. Is that what you think happened? Miss Mitchell? Lauren blinked, startled by the unfamiliar authority in Evelyn's tone. I'm sorry. And you are? Evelyn's lips curved slightly, not into a smile, but into something far colder. Evelyn Harper, she said, letting the weight of her name settle like a gavel striking, founder, CEO, and sole owner of Lux Emporium. Silence swallowed the boutique whole. A glass clinked faintly as someone set down their champagne in shock. Vivian's smirk vanished, her hand freezing mid-gesture. Marcus paled instantly, stepping back as though gravity had shifted beneath his feet. Aisha gasped softly, her hand covering her mouth as tears welled in her eyes. But Lauren went rigid, her face draining of color. That's not possible, she stammered, forcing a laugh she didn't feel. You can't be serious. Cassandra folded her arms tightly, her gaze locking on Lauren like a hawk. Serious enough, she said sharply. And we have the security footage, customer recordings, and live-streamed videos viewed by over 300,000 people in the last hour to prove exactly what happened here today. A murmur rippled through the crowd of affluent shoppers. Many lowered their phones, their earlier amusement replaced with dawning dread. One man muttered under his breath, "Oh, God." "She owns the store," another whispered. "This is going viral." Evelyn's eyes remained fixed on Lauren, unblinking and unwavering. "You judged me by my clothes," she said softly, but the quiet power in her voice carried through the entire boutique. "By my sneakers, by my wallet, by my skin. And you turned cruelty into entertainment. In my store." Lauren's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Marcus, sensing danger, tried to interject weakly. I was just following orders," but Cassandra silenced him with a single glance. "You'll get your turn." "Mr. Tate," she said curtly, her voice sharp as steel. Evelyn turned slightly, addressing the crowd. "I built Lux Emporium so that dignity was universal, so no one would ever feel small in a place I created. Yet today, my flagship store became a stage for prejudice and humiliation." Her gaze swept slowly across the room, meeting the eyes of every customer, every employee, every person who had laughed or stayed silent. "This," she said firmly, "ends today." Cassandra stepped forward, her voice carrying the finality of judgment. "Lauren Mitchell, effective immediately. Your employment is terminated. Security, remove her badge." David Kim moved swiftly, unclipping Lauren's manager badge from her blazer as gasps filled the room. Lauren stumbled back, shaking her head in disbelief, her voice breaking. "You can't do this. I've worked here 15 years. And in 15 minutes, Evelyn interrupted sharply. "You undid everything this brand stands for." Marcus swallowed hard, his hands clasped tightly in front of him. Cassandra's gaze cut toward him next. "Mr. Tate, you are demoted, effective immediately. You will undergo mandatory bias training and be reassigned to another location. You're lucky you're not being terminated." Vivian Holt, still clutching her champagne glass, tried to regain her composure, forcing a polite laugh. "Well, surely this isn't necessary," she said, waving a dismissive hand. Evelyn's gaze locked on her instantly, sharp enough to freeze her mid-motion. "You are hereby banned from all Lux Emporium properties," Evelyn said calmly. "Your status, your purchases, your donations. None of it buys you a license to disrespect anyone in my stores." Vivian's mouth opened, then closed again. She sat down quietly, her face pale and shaken. Customers who had joined in the humiliation earlier shifted uncomfortably, lowering their phones and avoiding Evelyn's gaze. Cassandra turned to the staff next. "Every employee in this location will undergo mandatory retraining." "Aisha Coleman," she said, glancing at the young cashier. "Your record shows hesitation, and we know you were pressured. You'll have an opportunity to make this right. Aisha nodded quickly, tears streaking her cheeks. Thank you, she whispered, her voice cracking. Evelyn turned back to address the entire room one final time. Her voice softened but carried unshakable authority. You all had a choice today. You could have spoken up. You could have done better. Instead, you chose silence, or worse, laughter. But this ends here. From this moment forward, Lux Emporium will reflect the values I built it on: dignity, respect, and equality. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the quiet hum of the air conditioning and the faint buzz of live stream notifications still flooding in. Then, without another word, Evelyn turned and walked deeper into the store, Cassandra and Priya flanking her like sentinels, while David escorted Lauren out past the stunned crowd, outside. The humid Miami air buzzed with chaos as onlookers filmed Lauren's exit, her once proud stride now reduced to hurried steps under the weight of shame. Back inside, Evelyn glanced at Nathan Brooks, who had just arrived with a team of analysts carrying binders of ownership documents and recorded footage. Send the video to corporate channels, she said firmly. I want every employee in all 1032 stores to see exactly what happens when our values are betrayed. Nathan nodded, already in motion. And just like that, the power dynamics shifted completely. Lauren's kingdom had fallen, but Evelyn's vision for Lux Emporium had only grown stronger. In less than an hour, the woman everyone mocked would become a national headline, not for being humiliated, but for standing tall, reclaiming dignity, and setting a standard the entire company would never forget. The videos hit the internet like wildfire. Within minutes, the clip of Lauren Mitchell slapping Evelyn Harper in the middle of Lux Emporium flooded TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. Hashtags exploded. Hashtag Luxgate, hashtag Know Your Place, and hashtag Evelyn Harper trended worldwide. By the time the sun dipped low over Miami's Ocean Drive, the video had racked up over 5.7 million views, with major news outlets picking up the story inside the flagship store. The air was heavy, tense, and silent as Evelyn Harper stood at the center of the marble floor, her calm presence commanding more power than any shouted word could. Cassandra Lee, head of HR, handed Evelyn a sleek tablet, showing real-time analytics of the viral spread. We've got corporate calling non-stop, Cassandra said quietly. Some stores are already reporting customer backlash. A few locations are even facing boycotts. Evelyn's expression didn't waver. Good, she said softly, her tone steady but resolute. This isn't bad press. This is accountability. And we're going to lead from the front. Lauren Mitchell sat slumped in the corner of the store, her once flawless confidence stripped away, mascara streaking her cheeks. Security guarded her quietly, waiting to escort her out once the paperwork was finalized. Marcus Tate stood near the jewelry counter, pale and shaken, gripping a glass of water with trembling hands. Vivian Holt had left the store entirely, humiliated after Evelyn's public ban. Customers who once sneered at Evelyn now avoided her gaze, their earlier laughter replaced with shame and quiet regret. Evelyn turned to face the staff, her heels clicking softly against the marble as the entire boutique seemed to hold its breath. Her voice was steady, warm but unwavering. I built Lux Emporium to be a sanctuary, she began, her gaze sweeping slowly across every employee and customer in the room. A place where anyone, regardless of who they are, would feel seen, respected, and valued. But today, this flagship store, the crown jewel of this company, became something I swore it would never be, a stage for humiliation, exclusion, and prejudice. Her words hung heavy in the silence. Aisha Coleman, her voice small but clear, spoke up for the first time. Ms. Harper, she said softly, clutching the edge of the counter. I wanted to say something. I wanted to step in. But I was afraid of losing my job. Evelyn walked over and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You're not to blame," she said gently. "Fear thrives in toxic environments. It's my job to fix the culture that allowed this to happen." Then Evelyn turned to Cassandra. "Effective immediately. We're implementing company-wide diversity and inclusion reforms. Every employee, from cashier to executive, will undergo intensive training. We're rewriting policies to ensure dignity is protected at every level." Cassandra nodded firmly. Taking notes, Priya Sharma, the COO, added, "I'll have HR coordinate new leadership guidelines. From now on, managers will be evaluated on values, not just sales." Evelyn looked toward Nathan Brooks, her assistant. "I want a full audit of our stores. Every location, anonymous customer reports, employee surveys, video reviews. If anything like this happens again, I want to know first." Nathan nodded quickly, already typing furiously on his tablet. "We'll have a system ready within 48 hours. Evelyn stepped back, folding her arms, her voice growing firmer. "Lauren Mitchell," she said, turning toward the former store manager. Lauren slowly lifted her head, her swollen eyes meeting Evelyn's gaze. "You judged me by my sneakers, my wallet, my skin," Evelyn said, her voice low but sharp. "You decided I didn't belong in my own store, and you turned cruelty into entertainment. You've been terminated effective immediately, and your actions today will serve as a case study for every manager we hire moving forward." Lauren swallowed hard, her voice breaking. I made a mistake." Evelyn's tone softened, but only slightly. "No, Lauren, you made a choice, and choices have consequences." David Kim, the director of security, stepped forward and handed Lauren her termination paperwork, with quiet dignity. Evelyn nodded toward the door. "Escort her out." The crowd watched in silence as Lauren, once the self-proclaimed gatekeeper of exclusivity, walked slowly past the glass entrance, her head bowed under the weight of her downfall. No one laughed. No one filmed, for the first time all day. The store was quiet enough to hear the hum of the air conditioning. Evelyn turned back to the employees, her voice carrying a new sense of hope. "Aisha, starting today, you'll train directly under Cassandra for a leadership role. We need managers who embody compassion and respect, not intimidation." Aisha's eyes widened, her hands flying to her mouth. "Me? But..." "No buts," Evelyn interrupted softly, smiling faintly. "You've shown restraint, empathy, and integrity. Those qualities are priceless here." Aisha's tears finally fell, but this time they were from relief. She nodded quickly, whispering, "Thank you, Ms. Harper. I won't let you down." Marcus shifted nervously where he stood, his earlier bravado gone. Evelyn's gaze fell on him next. "As for you, Marcus, you'll remain with the company, but under strict conditions: demotion, retraining, and mentorship under Aisha when she assumes her new role." Marcus lowered his head, his voice barely audible. "Understood." Priya stepped forward, her tablet glowing with notifications. "Evelyn, media outlets are requesting statements. CNN, ABC, and even Forbes want interviews." Evelyn glanced briefly toward the cameras still raised by customers. "We won't run from this," she said calmly. "We'll face it head on. I'll speak directly to the press tonight." Cassandra leaned in slightly, her voice quiet but firm. "And the live stream?" Evelyn looked around the room, her gaze landing on a young influencer who was still broadcasting to thousands of viewers. She addressed him directly. "Keep recording. Let them see this moment. Let them see who we are and what we stand for." The influencer nodded slowly, lowering the camera just enough to frame Evelyn at the center of the store, the embodiment of authority, dignity, and redemption. Evelyn faced the staff one final time, her voice carrying the weight of her promise. This company will change because of what happened here today. Lux Emporium isn't just a luxury brand. It's a reflection of our values. And starting now, those values will be impossible to ignore. Outside, as the humid Miami evening settled over Ocean Drive, the black SUVs remained parked like silent sentinels. Inside, Lux Emporium no longer belonged to Lauren's vision of exclusivity or Vivian's gatekeeping whispers. It belonged to Evelyn Harper, exactly as it always had. But now, the entire world was watching her redefine what luxury truly meant. The fallout from the Lux Emporium incident was unlike anything the company had ever faced. Within 24 hours, the video of Lauren Mitchell slapping Evelyn Harper had reached over 28 million views across TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. News outlets ran the headline non-stop. Black billionaire humiliated in her own store. Fires manager on the spot. Morning shows debated it. Podcasts dissected it. Hashtags like hashtag Lux Emporium, hashtag respect over status, and hashtag Evelyn Harper topped trending lists worldwide. But while the media frenzy spiraled, Evelyn Harper remained calm, choosing action over outrage. Inside Lux Emporium's headquarters the next morning, a glass-walled boardroom overlooked the Miami skyline. Evelyn stood at the head of a sleek oak table, surrounded by Cassandra Lee, Priya Sharma, Nathan Brooks, and other top executives. Her presence was commanding, but her tone was measured, deliberate. "This is bigger than one store," she began, her voice steady. "This isn't just about Miami, or about Lauren. This is about every customer who has ever walked into one of our 1032 locations and wondered if they belonged. That ends today." Cassandra nodded, sliding a thick binder across the table. Inside were preliminary findings from an overnight audit, customer complaints, anonymous employee reports, and policy gaps that had allowed toxic behavior to grow unchecked. "We've confirmed 23 other incidents across various stores in the past 2 years," Cassandra said, her voice heavy with disappointment. Some were subtle, others less so. But they all point to the same problem, a culture that prizes status over dignity. Evelyn's jaw tightened. "Then we're rebuilding the culture from the ground up," she said firmly. "Effective immediately. We launch Project Unity, a company-wide initiative to retrain every employee, every manager, every executive. Lux Emporium will stand for inclusion, not intimidation," Priya added. "We'll pair this with mandatory leadership evaluations. Promotions and bonuses will no longer depend solely on sales performance. They'll depend on values, empathy, and accountability." Nathan Brooks leaned forward, his tablet lighting up with live metrics. "Social sentiment has shifted in our favor since yesterday," he reported. "Customers are praising the decisive response. We've gained nearly 18,000 new followers on Instagram in less than 12 hours. But they want transparency." Evelyn nodded. "Then they'll have it. Starting today, Lux Emporium publishes an annual inclusivity report. Real numbers, real progress, no sugarcoating." Her statement drew murmurs of agreement from the executives. But Evelyn wasn't done. She clicked a remote, bringing a paused video onto the large display screen, the viral clip, frozen at the exact moment Lauren's hand struck her face. "This," Evelyn said, pointing at the screen, "is our wake-up call. It's not just what Lauren did, it's how the crowd reacted, the laughter, the recording, the silence from those who knew better but stayed quiet. That changes today." The room fell silent. Priya broke it gently. "What about public relations? We've had offers from CNN, GMA, Forbes. They all want your statement." Evelyn considered it for a moment, then shook her head slightly. "We're not selling a redemption arc. We're setting a standard. Schedule 1 interview. Live. No edits. I want to speak directly to the people." 2 days later, Evelyn sat across from a primetime news anchor, the world watching. Cameras rolled as the anchor recapped the viral incident. then turned to Evelyn. "You've been praised for your composure in the face of humiliation." The anchor began. "But many are asking, what comes next for Lux Emporium?" Evelyn's answer was simple, her tone even yet resolute. Lux Emporium was built to celebrate beauty, artistry, and individuality. Somewhere along the way, we forgot the most important value, dignity. That's changing now. No matter who you are, what you wear, or what you earn, when you walk into one of our stores, you will be respected. The clip went viral instantly, reaching 42 million views within hours and cementing Evelyn as a symbol of strength and leadership. Back in Miami, Lux Emporium's transformation began swiftly. Lauren Mitchell's name became a cautionary tale in corporate trainings, while Aisha Coleman flourished under Cassandra's mentorship. Within 6 months, Aisha was promoted to assistant manager of the flagship store, becoming a living example of what leadership rooted in empathy could achieve. Marcus Tate, humbled by his demotion, completed his retraining and returned with a renewed commitment to fairness, publicly apologizing to both Evelyn and the staff he'd once dismissed. Vivian Holt, stripped of her socialite privileges, issued a private letter of apology that Evelyn chose not to respond to. The company's reforms spread quickly. Project Unity became the foundation for a nationwide inclusivity model, studied by other luxury brands seeking to rebuild public trust. Evelyn invested $15 million into diversity initiatives, launching scholarships for underrepresented students interested in fashion and retail management at the Miami flagship. The once intimidating glass facade now carried a simple sign near the entrance: "Dignity is luxury." Customers noticed. So did employees. Within a year, customer satisfaction ratings skyrocketed by 37%, and employee turnover dropped to historic lows. Sales surged by 22% nationwide. But more importantly, Lux Emporium became a symbol of cultural transformation. One evening, months after the incident, Evelyn returned to the Ocean Drive flagship. The store buzzed with quiet energy, a balanced hum of shoppers, employees, and elegance, the way she had always envisioned it. Aisha spotted her from behind the counter and hurried over, her face glowing with pride. "Ms. Harper," she said warmly, "I just wanted to say thank you, not just for believing in me, but for believing this place could be better." Evelyn smiled softly, resting a hand on Aisha's shoulder. "You earned this, Aisha, and because of you, we'll never go back." Outside, Miami's humid evening air wrapped around the Lux Emporium facade, now glowing with soft golden light. Evelyn stepped onto the sidewalk, watching the reflection of her store against the glass windows across the street. For a moment, she thought of her mother, the woman who once walked into a luxury boutique decades ago, only to be told she didn't belong. Evelyn had built Lux Emporium to make sure no one would ever feel that pain again, and now, finally, her vision was real. As she looked back at the store, cameras still flashing from passers-by snapping photos, Evelyn spoke quietly to herself, the words carried softly by the Miami breeze. "Dignity," she whispered, "will always be priceless." The next morning, Forbes published its annual list of most influential business leaders, and Evelyn Harper's name